Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. Hello, Jen.
Hello, Tamara.
We hope you guys are all doing well here. And those of you that are mothers or no mothers or have mothers, which I think is all of us, you had a good Mother's Day weekend and spring. I know spring is popping here in the Midwest for us. So, and as we're starting to look at later spring, early June, start to look at what's left for the remainder of 2021 as time is marching along here. We thought today we would talk a little bit about regrouping and refocusing on what are our top three things for the firm and making sure everybody's aligned on that. What are our top three things by department and then by individual? We just did some of that today with our team. And gosh, it's good to get recentered. There's a little bit, of how are we going to accomplish this and some pieces to pull together and some specificity that we have to go back and do some work on. But at least the team knows how we're marching forward, both, globally, if you will, and then also individually so we can support each other. And we just think that's really important, that people have clarity, as they're approaching these summer months and looking to fall. What does that look like, for us and us as a firm, like I said, and then us as individuals? What are the expectations going to be? So we just think it's important to pause and stop and do that. So Jen, what would you like to add to that?
Well, because this is a talent-focused, discussion, the top three priorities for talent management are HR as well.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we find in operational roles is you could have three specific measurable objectives or five or whatever the number is, no more than five, we hope. And they could be, built and ready to roll in January. By the time we get to May, things may have shifted. Certainly we saw all kinds of market shifts last year that we could never have anticipated. This year, things keep moving and changing as well. So, what are the top three talent priorities? And they have to tie to the firm's priorities. But one thing that we tell operational leaders a lot, not just HR managers and leaders, but also IT, firm administration, operations there, marketing, sales, finance, all the key operational areas. We think that an annual top three things or an annual 3 to 5 goals is harder for you because the shifting priorities of the firm create a little chaos for you on a day-to-day, week-by-week, and month-to-month basis. So one thing to think about is quarterly top three things. And as you're entering, for some of you, the end of the peak spring season, starting to head into into summer, which for some are still busy months, but for others, they're sort of catch-up months. What are those top three priorities for the next 90 days? And getting agreement between yourself and your firm's management committee or executive committee or whoever you report to, and then communicating those out and rigorously managing them by saying, no, that's not in scope for this quarter, and let's move it to the next quarter. We'll happily do it, but we can't do it and do these three things, and being sort of militant about that too.
Well, and I think it's important, Jen, when you say we have to have agreement on those 3 to 5 things and regroup and say what's changed. Also, if I have 9 partners or 18 partners or 35 partners, they all have their version of what they think talent management, what they think IT should be focusing on, what they think marketing and growth should be focusing on, let alone within their departments. And so it really is important for us to regroup and say what's most important for the next 90 days. And here's what we're going to do. And then we could also maybe do some research on some other things, ideas come up. We'll do some research on it. We'll come back with a plan. That might be a way. So we're like, no, not now. We're not trying to be that way. But we do have to say we want to be successful with these things that we already agreed on. Or another way to be a little militant is to say, okay, if that's more important now and I can buy in that it is, then we're going to move this off the plate, pause it, it's on hold, communicate that out so we can reinsert the other. And I think as you do that for your goals and your top 3 to 5 things, you can start to ask, how does this fit into our firm's top 3 to 5 things? What changes should we be considering? Are we anticipating? should we stop and assess that as a leadership group with the management committee or with the partner group if it's, small enough, you operate that way, however you operate, it's a good way to start to say, how does that fit in and where are we with our top 3 things for the firm? And so we want to make sure that fits. So it's a good segue into that conversation.
Yes, and getting top 3 priorities shouldn't be super difficult other than the fact that everybody wants you to have 30 instead of 3. But going out and asking service line leaders, industry group leaders, other operational leaders, members of your executive committee or management committee, asking them, polling them and saying, of these 5 or 6 things, which would you put as the top 3 for my group in the next 90 days? And maybe there's a 7th thing that's other, please specify, which is a write-in candidate for one of your priorities, which they may have and you may not have thought of, or you may not have known was coming. And you don't, for some of you, you're like, my gosh, have you seen the size of my firm? I could never get that much input. And by the time I reconcile all that data, the year will be over. So I'm not encouraging you to get too much information, but just getting a pulse on what others feel about your priorities, I think is super helpful. And then sort of honing in on them, choosing them, and then communicating them back and saying, hey, we got a lot of good input. Wish we could, have the resources to do 30 of these, but we can only do 3. And in the next 90 days, here's where our focus will be.
Right.
For a lot of talent professionals right now, coming into, really mid-May and post-May into June, we're going to see turnover. I hope your firm doesn't have much, but it's a normal time of turnover as busy seasons complete. We know we're facing some burnout. We know we have to replace capacity lost in most instances, and we were probably down people anyway. So we know recruiting is very likely to be an important top 3, maybe through the rest of the year. At least we hope so. And not just on campus. That would be one. And then, wellness is another suspicious candidate for top 3 because of burnout, because of the need for vacation. We were talking about this earlier. At Convergence, we have the privilege of coaching a lot of future leaders one-on-one. Tamara said in an earlier call to me, hey, I'm talking to every single person about their vacation and working with them to identify their plan, making sure they have one, even if they're not comfortable traveling. And so, and I agreed, I had been doing some of the same, and I'm getting some weird answers. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a lot of wishy-washy, like, I'm taking an hour here or an hour there, or, I'm still kind of thinking about waiting until I can really travel. And we think that that's a terrible idea if people haven't had some contiguous days off in a row. Whether it's 5 or not, I don't know, but I would try for 5. And so anyway, that wellness might be another one.
Well, and one of our team members is doing something we talked about, this idea of 4-day weekends.
Yes.
She's not traveling. And so she knows the value of being off and that long period of time. So she's like, this is what I'm going to do this year. And that's a brilliant solution. So that's when we say, how are we working, with, people to make sure that they have a plan and they've identified it. And then we're supporting them in taking it off. I mean, that's the other thing is, talent leaders, we have to make sure that our service line leaders, our partners are supporting that time off so they can truly take the time off. And how do we make sure that that's scheduled and supported?
So I'm going to take a commercial break here.
Yes.
Not really, because we don't do commercials at Convergence, but the commercial is an advertisement for the people that we're talking to who are in the talent function to please take some time off.
Yes.
So maybe one of your top 3 priorities.
Public service announcement.
Yes. Thank you. Not a commercial, public service announcement, of course. In the next 90 days, how are you getting your time off? Yes. And then how are you making sure your people are? Because I think, I'm not saying this just because you're on the line with us, or because we love talent people, because we do. I think the pandemic inside the organizations has been as hard on the managing partner and the talent function as anybody in the firm. And some would say, wait a minute, have you seen my busy seasons and all the stuff I've had to learn and all the clients and all the changes? Yeah, we've seen all that, but talent, It has been brutal. And from the first words of, oh my gosh, we're pivoting to remote, we're going to have to put all this stuff into place. We're going to have to, morph our policies and get to paperless for anything that we were doing to support people. And oh my goodness, there's illness in our employee base and people need help. Employee assistance is needed. And so what can we do there? And gosh, how are we going to manage work remotely? And how are we going to teach it? And, what sort of communications are we going to have weekly? Gosh, we have to circle the wagons and communicate. I feel like there's been some sort of innovation or emergency crisis every day for almost every week of this pandemic for the talent folks. And so just recognizing you need a break and you're not going to be good to anybody if you don't get one. And maybe it's already a little bit grouchy land or whatever occasionally because of the unreasonable requests you're getting, which are necessary maybe, I guess. But anyway, just a thought there as we're talking top 3 priorities, maybe one of them needs to be the entire HR group or all of those who've been involved in this talent thing for the last 18 months or 15 months. We're gonna schedule time off and make sure we get it.
I think that's perfect. And I think you pointed to another suspicious top 3, and that would be anything that is not paperless or anything that we have not gone digital or remote on, that we are shifting to that. What onboarding, our recruiting, our training and learning programs, that we're recording learning programs. I was on a call with a tax service line leader, and HR is like, okay, I have somebody starting here and I need somebody to teach them on this. And then, somebody's starting 2 weeks later and they need to teach the exact same thing. It's halt. We need to record that. And then we can have somebody come in and sit in at the end of that. And what else is there that we should be making sure that we have available in this remote and hybrid environment, and just kind of going through everything talent-wise to say, how do we make this shift? What is that going to look like? And how do we best, facilitate that in 2021? So we aren't stopping completely. We're keeping things moving forward, but also we're preparing for this blended environment. Not waiting. We keep talking on these and the other forums and writing, not waiting for us to come back. And we talked about performance reviews, last week, and we can't wait till we come back to do performance reviews. We have to have them. We talked about doing them tenderly, but with video likely for many of your folks. And so that's another example. What else do we need to be doing from a remote perspective?
So, Tamara, that reminds me of something else. And I know we wanted to talk about top 3 things, and I don't know where this fits. This is going to sound borderline nice to have, but it's starting to feel really urgent to me. And you just hit it, so I have to jump into it. And that is, in the olden days, we would ask people to craft procedures, and somebody would be assigned, please write the procedures for that. And as we've been thinking about transitioning retirees, I've found myself trying something that seems like it's working. And that is, instead of saying, hey, would you write down all the information we need on this client to serve them in the future, and send us a kind of a handoff memo of who the players are and all that stuff, you just get on Zoom or Teams and you hit record, and whoever's involved in transition asks the person a bunch of questions. And if we're trying to memorialize process, that's what we've been doing at Convergence, is we just jump on Zoom and we say, explain the process. And, I know that what you really want is the process in linear order 1 to 10, steps 1 to 10. And when you do it on a recording, they'll start talking and they'll do 1, 2, 3, 7. Oh, wait, back to 4. It isn't perfectly linear. Yes, you could get a transcript of these recordings, by the way, and you could type them if you wanted, but that is kind of a paperless paradigm or something. But we have found that, paper paradigm, right. Even though it's not, it's digitally typed, I realize. But anyway, we have found that these recordings can be invaluable, and it's a way to get information out of people's heads that we're not really getting otherwise. Everybody talks about, knowledge transfer and do a download and all that stuff, but nobody ever gets that stuff memorialized. And so maybe, that is something, as you're thinking about, Tamara said it for orientation. Why are we teaching people the same stuff over and over again live? Let's just record it. Right. And I think the same goes with Why are we not letting people tell us all this information that's in their head that we worry? We might be like, she's the only one that knows that process. Well, that only lasts for 1 hour. You could take 1 hour on Zoom and someone else will at least have it down.
Right.
On the recording, if we had to, muddle our way through it. So.
And again, we could document it from there. We could put it into procedures, put it online on Teams, whatever, SharePoint, whatever we're using. So I think I need to pause on these three. I'm sure we have a couple more ideas for top three, but I want to say something as we've been talking through these. We need specificity. I was just on a call with a CEO, and here's the top three, and one of them is, being client-centric. One of them is innovation. One of them is talent. Okay, well, what are we accomplishing this year in those? Well, we're going to do kind of this, and we're going to look at this training, and we're going to do, no. What are we going to exactly? So if we're going to digitize, we're going to go and make sure that whatever has not been paperless is not paperless. We can say everything. Well, we're probably going to get ourselves into trouble if we say that, first of all. So let's get specific what we're going to move forward, and by when, maybe by quarter. Or recruiting. Jen, you were talking about recruiting. Gosh, we need talent. And maybe one of the talent strategies is we're going to try a non-traditional hire in a specific service line and hire them, bring them on board, and pilot it for 90 days. And so we're going to test it. Maybe we're going to recruit and find, 5 interns, for this summer with the goal of keeping 3 of them. We need to get specific. I know we could say that manager level, that supervisor manager levels, like our unicorns out there. Where are we going to find those? Maybe we need to get creative about that, but we're going to find one in tax, one in consulting, and one in audit. But if we're not specific about it, then it's like everybody's still making it up. And it's hard to know if we're winning. And sometimes it feels like we're not winning, and that's what's draining. So we got to say, what does that look like? Wellness. What are we specifically going to do in the area of wellness in the next 90 days? One of them is make sure everybody has a vacation on the books. We could measure that. I could see that it's done. That could be one of our things that we're doing underneath that. So just as we've been talking, I thought we should kind of circle back and say, like, that is the level of specificity that we want to see you have. So your team knows what we need to do. You and your team needs to know what we need to do to succeed, but we can then also communicate it out, get the right resources allocated, get buy-in. Because maybe there's some, that's not what the measure should be. I want that feedback, as soon as I, publish those. So it's really important to get that level of specificity.
So you cracked me up when you were saying innovation and, talent and technology. Because sometimes people will tell us those are my top 3 things.
Right.
And we're like, so we're going to solve all of talent, and we know they're not. We know they don't mean that, but sometimes we do that kind of summary, not just to make it murky for ourselves, but we do the summary sometimes because there are so many things we want to do under talent that if we ball it all up and call it talent, then poor talent, feels like it's talent is a firm-wide thing, one of our top 3 things, and it has 19 sub-bullets or something, which you will never get done. So Tamara's right. When we get really in the nitty-gritty, and she was down in measuring a specific thing, but even one step above that, which of the 19 things? So.
Right.
Is it recruiting? No. Recruiting is year round, all the time. It's a business function. It's like saying, this year my goal is.
We're going to do billing. We're going to do billing.
We're going to work on billing. Well, we always do billing. So what about recruiting? Is it non-traditional hires? Is it outsourcing? Is it offshoring? Is it fractional? Is it, are we going to, really beef up our on-campus process? Are we going to try to make our internships stickier so that we keep these people? What are we trying to do? Are we going to take our experienced hire recruiting and really get digital with it and really build an experienced hire community? Are we going to make sure we've documented Emily's laughing about billing out there on the comments. So thank you, Emily. Yeah, we're laughing too. So, is it that we're gonna, what part of hiring or recruiting is it going to be? Are we going to build a community of people in our towns or geographies or in specialties that we know of that work elsewhere that we're going to start getting in touch with and making friends with in case they ever want to leave. There's so many things you could be doing, and you can't do them all. The other thing is sometimes if we're faced with a bunch of priorities, they literally say talent with 19 bullets, that's a good time for you to stop and say, hey, we could do 3 of these if I had this resource and we need to make a hire, or I need to hire an outside contractor or whatever. And so part of this top 3 things thing isn't so that you turn into Mr. or Mrs. No, I can't do that. It's so that you turn into a practical implementer, who's going to cause things to be successfully completed and winning, as Tamara said, to be clear so that when we get there, we all high five and then we move to the next thing. And without that specificity, you're never going to, get there. It's a never-ending finish line, never shows up. And then also, you may never be able to get any additional resource. What their order is so big, but they don't realize it.
Right.
And I think that's another mistake we make is we think they know what they're asking of us, and we think it sounds ridiculous, and we could get resentful or frustrated by that. They don't really, the people that work with us, they're not in our discipline. They don't know what it takes to do it. So if they really need it, we should then come back and say, here's what it would take to do it. And I could do it, but here's what the priorities would be, and here's the resources I need. And I think that's a real missing for a lot of us.
Agreed. That education is so important. And that's our job. They don't know, just the same with our clients. They don't really know what it takes, what's happening over here behind the, curtain. And so it's our job to say, here's the steps, here's what, the resources, here's how long it'll, likely take. And then we can say, where does that fit? Can we invest in it? So I know we are at time, and I hope we gave you some ideas to go back and reaffirm your top 3 priorities, recommunicate them, make sure they still fit into the firm's top 3 priorities, and then help your people figure out what they're going to be focusing on in the next 7 months. As you approach June 1st, if we could have that defined for people, I think they'll feel better. And they'll know where to focus their energies, and then also we'll be able to, execute and succeed on those accomplishments. So good to be with everybody. We will see you next week, and have a great productive week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye now.